Have you ever heard of a concept called semantic saturation? That's what I want to talk about today, and it's something that I feel is really important, especially in the age of social media and the internet and so on. So essentially, semantic saturation is the process by which where the frequent use of a word can erode its meaning. Basically, where overuse or misuse of the term leads to a dilution or a broadening of its original and extremely specific meaning. A great example of this, it's a great example because you will see it day in and day out when you go on social media. It is the term Nazi. So, whenever you talk about Nazis and such, it's a sensitive topic. So I'm not actually, I just want to be clear, I'm not actually going to be talking about Nazis or anything they did. I'm talking about the way the word is used in modern times on social media, in traditional media, in regular conversations, and so on. So a bit of historical context in the name of, being clear and complete with what I'm saying. The term Nazi originally referred to a member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. That's a bit of a mouthful. Which was led by Adolf Hitler in Germany. And the word carries with it the heavy historical context of the Second World War, specifically the Holocaust, and also the extreme ideology of fascism and anti-Semitism. The term itself is laden with the atrocities committed during this period, representing a very specific and frankly horrifying chapter in human history. In contemporary discourse, the term Nazi it's used a lot. It is frequently used outside of its historical context to describe an array of behaviors, ideologies, and individuals that most often the speaker disagrees with. And that overuse and that misuse is something that you've probably seen online. I opened Twitter a few minutes ago while I was between tasks, and I saw several posts in which people labelled other people as Nazis, and by the proper definition, these people are definitely not Nazis. They're just people that have a different perspective or viewpoint on certain issues. So it's literally everywhere. So we see it we see it in politics. That's probably the most obvious place to look for it. We see it in politics. So politicians, and actually more often than not, it's their supporters, use the term Nazi to label their opponents. But they do so without any real regard to how appropriate a label or a comparison that might be. And as I mentioned a minute ago, you see it online all the time. So beyond the examples I gave when I mentioned social media, a ridiculous and silly example would be when the term is used hyperbolically, of course, to criticize someone for being strict around the use of grammar. So if someone corrects somebody on their grammar, that person gets labelled a grammar Nazi. And I think it's clear to see that that person's not a Nazi. That person's just correcting someone's grammar. And the comparison is ridiculous. Yeah, it's done all the time. And the other sort of misuse of the term is when it's used as an insult. When some people will label the other person a Nazi, not because they believe that person's a Nazi, but because they know that calling them a Nazi will hurt their feelings. So that's like the misuse and overuse of the word. And that has consequences. First and foremost, and this is the most important in my opinion, is that it dilutes the historical significance of the term. The more the term is used in everyday contexts, the less it retains any meaningful connection to its specific historical and ideological roots. This drastically diminishes the gravity of the term and also the recognition of the historical atrocities committed by the Nazis. Another of the consequences is hyperbole and sensationalism. So the term itself gets used as a tool for hyperbole, often used to sensationalize or exaggerate a point, which in turn reduces the accuracy and seriousness of the conversation in general. Another of the consequences is desensitization. So when the more you do something, the more something happens, the less sensitive you are to it. So a big issue with the desensitization is that if the term is used all the time incorrectly, when it is used correctly to describe someone who actually is a Nazi, it becomes mostly meaningless because the impact is gone. And so that label of Nazi attached to that person, in this case completely deserved, becomes meaningless. And as a result, the consequences and implications of it also become meaningless. And another consequence of the widespread and, dare I say, casual use of the term Nazi is polarization and divisiveness. Using such a loaded and charged term carelessly contributes to the ever-increasing polarization and division that exists in the world. And that it does so because it can unfairly demonize individuals or groups, and also that polarization and that division prevents any constructive dialogue taking place. There can be no useful dialectic that happens after that point. So there's an impact of all of this. The impact of the semantic saturation and the erosion of the meaning that comes along with that. That reflects broader social trends in language and communication. So, for instance, you have semantic drift, where words and phrases naturally evolve over time, but rapid and contextually inappropriate shifts can lead to significant changes in meaning, which, as a quick aside, creates a bit of a paradox, because then it puts into question all past usage of the term. And that's actually a paradox within philosophy that Sol Kripke is quite famous for diving into. So there's that. You also have the impact on memory and education. So when historical terms lose their specific meaning, it impacts the collective memory and education, making it harder for new generations to fully understand and learn from historical events, which is important. So in the context of Nazis, so the historical events were obviously atrocious. So when a student learns about the Nazis at school, but their idea about what that means, what the term means, is very different to that historical context. It means that historical context is being looked at through an inaccurate filter, an inaccurate lens. And the other thing to think about with regards to the social and cultural impact of the overuse of the term Nazi and the subsequent erosion of the meaning is described as responsibility in language use. So the phenomenon underscores the importance of responsible language use, especially with terms that carry significant historical and ethical weight. So the frequent and casual use of the term Nazi is a great example of how powerful words can lose their precise meaning and impact through overuse and misuse. This erosion of meaning not only distorts historical understanding, but also diminishes the seriousness of modern contemporary discourse, highlighting the need for careful and respectful use of language. So, as an individual, you can do nothing about what the rest of the world is doing, but you personally can take some measure of responsibility, and that comes down to how you use the term. So I'm sticking with the Nazi example here. But a simple rule of thumb really would be only use the term Nazi to describe an actual Nazi. Don't use it for anything else. And then that word retains at least some of its meaning, and you pass that on to your children and so on and so forth. But that is something we all need to consider as individuals. But yeah, so that is, in a nutshell anyway, that is a very brief run through of the process that we call semantic saturation. The overuse and misuse of a term leading to the dilution of its meaning. And before I go, and I promise you I'm going, I know you're sick of me already, but before I go, I want you to jump into the comments, and I want you to comment some words that you feel are undergoing semantic saturation in their common use. If you're looking for inspiration for those words, just look into look at politics on social media and the way people describe one another. So right now, there's elections coming up here in the UK. There's elections coming up in the United States. I'm not actually sure about where else elections are going on, nor am I particularly interested, but nonetheless, Look online, go on Twitter, on Facebook, on your favorite news app, whatever. Go online and look at the way that people are describing each other, how political candidates are describing each other, on either side of the line, and how their supporters are describing one another as well. And you will see a multitude of terms in there that once upon a time held great and specific, impactful meaning, and now have been watered down into nothing. So I'd like you to go and do that, then come back and jump in the comments and let me know which words that you can see in their common usage being falling prey to the process of semantic saturation.